Hi everyone, this is a video that I've been meaning to do for quite some time. Um, I grow quite a bit of bittermelons. It's one of our favorite vegetables that we use, and I enjoy bittermelon quite a bit. So I've grown several different varieties in the past. So I'm kind of going over some of the varieties I'm growing this year, and what I think about it. So first up, this is well, bittermelon, usually they classify it into two major groups. It's an Indian variety, which is usually like serrated like this. It's like very kind of ridgy and bumpy and spiky looking. And then there's the Chinese variety, which has a much more smoother skin, like wart-like but very smooth. Um, it's not spiky at all. Just kind of more like these little ridges. So I've grown in the past two different Indian strains. Unfortunately, I never really got the names of them. This is the one I end up keeping. I like it because it kind of gets a bit more wider than the other ones I've had. And the Indian varieties, for the most part, people consider it much more bitter. I enjoy the bitterness, so I kind of use a lot of this for soups, and I feel like the texture kind of holds up a bit more better. It's a bit more firmer, and the kind of ridge-like kind of bumpiness kind of add a texture to it that I kind of enjoy quite a bit. So this is one of it. This is kind of when you should kind of pick it. It's a very kind of cool, beautiful looking fruit. This is one that's actually fully ripe. So it does get larger. I had fruits that got up to like 11, 12 inches in length. But you know, when they get larger, some people say it may get more bitter. I'm not sure if as it matures, it gets more bitter. I don't know. I never really kind of tested it that way. But I do know it kind of gets a bit more mealy. So, you know, once it gets older and there's some color, the flesh kind of gets more mealy. It's not really the best quality you want. But this is one that just ripened just like a day ago. Really pretty looking fruit. See all these spikes you see. Of course, these are soft. It looks really spiky, but they are soft. The one thing about this Indian strain, and I haven't noticed that in any of the other ones I've grown, but the flowers, the blooms, when it blooms, it has a very nice fragrance. It kind of almost reminds me of jasmine. It's the only, I don't know, maybe a lot of the Indian varieties all have that quality, but I have not seen it in any of the Chinese variety or some of the kind of like the Japanese Okinawan variety, like these right here. So it's only been the Indian, like probably more like the purebred Indian strains that had very nice smelling blooms. There you go. Okay. This is a variety I grew last year and this year. We just kind of cut it short. It has all the features that some of the Chinese variety have. The kind of more smooth skin, wart-like features. This one's just a short one. There's a lot of other varieties that's quite longer. I've been growing this to kind of test it out, and it hasn't been as prolific as I wanted, so probably not something I'll be growing again next year, just because not as prolific. But everything about it, it's similar to the long one. Unfortunately, I didn't grow any of the long varieties this year of these kind of smooth Chinese variety. I only have this right here. And usually with these Chinese variety, they make for stuffing meats a lot easier, just because, you know, when you hold on to this, there's no like really spiky kind of bumps that you break off. When you cut into it, usually it has a lot less seeds than some of the Indian varieties, and even like some of these Okinawan varieties. So it's easier to kind of scoop out the seeds just because there's not much of it in some of these. Okay. And although there's just two major groups, the Chinese and Indian variety that they say, there's a lot of what it seems like to be intermediaries of these, or crosses in between. There's varieties in Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, and what's been kind of getting popular lately is the Japanese Okinawan varieties. So even though you kind of group into Chinese versus the Indian, there's all sorts of ones that's in between. So if you look at this, the bumps on this is a bit more, kind of higher, and it's not quite as flat as like some of these Chinese one, but it's not as spiky as the other one. And this is just the Okinawan one. There's several other varieties of this that you probably see that has all kinds of different intermediary shapes. From my understanding, from what I've experienced, I think the more flatter fruits tend to be less bitter, and when it leans towards white, it tends to be less bitter too. So those kind of two characteristics seems to kind of have a bit of the less bitterness in them if you don't enjoy that kind of bitterness to it. And like I said, for myself, I enjoy the bitter ones, so I grow this. It's very, very prolific. The Indian one's very prolific, and I really like the bitterness of it. Okay, so this one is a variety called, this year is the first, I've been growing Bittermelons for quite some time, but this year is the first time I'm growing like what's like name varieties that I picked up. This is a Japanese Okinawan variety called Jyunpaku. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. But you could, it's probably pretty popular right now, so you could find it everywhere. I'll put it in the description of my video in terms of how you spell it. This one's a variety called Pearl. This is kind of small, but they do get quite a bit larger size. I mean, they seem pretty similar to the Jyunpaku. It's just that they're a bit more rounder and like top shape. Okay. Next thing I want to talk about is the seeds. Most of these seeds, most varieties, you have seeds that look like this. Nothing that different from one another. For example, you look at it, there might be some variations depending on variety. Some might be maybe a little bit more smoother, maybe a little bit more shorter, but for the most part, they all kind of have the same coloring and this pattern. The only variety I've grown that does not have that has been a variety called Big Top. Oops, my gloves is black, so let me just kind of put it down here. The seeds on these are very unique in terms that it's black. When I first got this seeds, I thought they sent me some bad seeds, but I grown them out. They grow fine. I harvested the first few of my fruits on it, and they all produce black seeds, which is just pretty unusual. It's the only variety I've seen that has produced these black seeds. Unfortunately, I don't have any fruits right now of it. I've been meaning to do this video when I have all the fruits, but that hasn't happened. Unfortunately, sometimes I have certain fruits, and then depending on ripeness and size, and certain times I don't have it. So I was gonna just go ahead and do this video just because you know, Bittermelon is one of my favorites, so I want to kind of show a review of it. So this is a variety called Big Top, and the seeds is black, and it's only a variety so far I've grown that has black seeds. And I have a short video of it if you guys want to see how it looks like. It's probably something similar in shape to the pearl. Might be a little bit more, slightly bigger than a pearl. This one's a really small one. But here goes black seeds. That's the only unique one I've ever seen. Okay. Next up, I'm gonna show some of the leaf patterns on this. They're kind of difficult to tell. It's not really that distinguishable, but for example, this is the Indian variety. Usually it's very kind of similar to its fruit. It's a lot more, I would say, serrated. You know, lots of more serration in terms of the leaf size, the leaf shapes. Some of the other ones could be a little bit more less. Like for example, this one's the kind of short Chinese one, this right here, and it seems to produce a bit more kind of, not as serrated, but you know, maybe the plant is not as mature yet, but we'll see. Also, same thing with this one. This one's the Big Top that I have on my tree. Unfortunately, I don't have a fruit of it, but this one's the Big Top. And again, a little bit more rounder on the leaf shape. I'll just put this aside. You could see some slight variation in them, but nothing too kind of extreme. Lastly, I am gonna cut open this Indian strain kind of variety of mine. I've been growing this for some time. And again, at one point I had two kind of strains. One produced more skinnier fruit, and this one produced wider fruit, and I kind of just enjoyed the shape of this one much more. So that's why I've been kind of keeping and growing this. And this year is the first time I started growing some named varieties of the Bittermelon. Cut this open. So this is how it looks like. It's very gelatinous, mildly sweet, but more kind of like a bland sweetness. It's nothing you could kind of just, I would say it's nothing you kind of just grow out for the purpose of the seeds, but it's not bad tasting. You know, it's a mild, bland kind of sweetness. Out of all the varieties I've grown in terms of tasting this, which one tasted the best? I tasted some of for the first time this year, the variety Big Top, the Pearl, and the Jyunpaku, those Okinawan ones. And I even tasted some of the Chinese ones in years past. And I would say the best tasting one is this Indian strain. Of course, the fruit is a lot more bitter than the other ones, but yeah. Let me just eat one right now. Here's the seed. Yeah. And you know, you could kind of go ahead and eat this. It just reminds me of the taste is not bad, but the texture might not be for everyone. These texture reminds me of like ingredients they kind of put in. If some of you guys like boba drinks, you know, it's kind of this gelatinous kind of jelly-like texture. You know, it's not for everyone. But for myself, I like that texture quite a bit. You know, I drink boba drinks here and there. It's something I could kind of easily see it just being placed in a boba drink. And this way, you know, I kind of just eat it just because it's a lot easier for me to kind of just eat some of it and save the seeds versus kind of cleaning it out. Okay. In terms of the end, what I'll be growing again, of course, definitely I'm gonna grow my favorite one, which is this Indian strain. I'll be growing that again next year. Most likely it's a short one. I'm not going to be growing again. It's not as productive as I want, so I'm going to probably stick to the more traditional longer ones for next year. These white varieties, they're very, very pretty, but unfortunately for me, they have not been that prolific. And I'm not really sure what's going on. Maybe my setup for it wasn't that great this year. So I'll be trying to grow this out again next year, but if they're not as prolific as, if they end up being not as prolific again, it's probably not something I'll be growing again, because they do take up quite a bit of space. And with them taking up space, I was hoping to be, a lot more prolific. And again, I'm in the Los Angeles kind of coastal area. So some of these varieties, I have some guess that maybe they don't perform that quite well for the coastal area. Maybe not enough heat, or I'm not sure. But then there's some, some that I got locally that I've grown, and they're just extremely prolific. Like, you get fruits pretty much, even when it's like the hottest days, it's just fruiting the whole time. For example, like, this variety, I mean, I've harvested countless fruits. I had countless fruits that ripened before I got to them. So again, but these are very pretty though. And this one's the smaller ones. I had some that's gotten like, like a foot long, and so, but okay, Jyunpaku and the pearl. Don't have the big top to show, but I have shorts on it, short videos on it if you guys want to see it. It's also a cool looking fruit, but again, probably not something I'll grow just because of the productivity. And again, forgot to mention, if you were kind of gonna grow this out just for the tasting the arrows, I mean, I don't know why you would, but if you would just grow out to taste the arrows, the Jyunpaku, I heard might be really good, but it's not really that much of a difference in terms of flavor versus all the other ones I've had. It does have a bit more seed versus like some of the Chinese strains where they have very little seeds and very little arrow if you want to taste it. But in terms of taste, it's just kind of a bland, bland sweetness, not much to it. It's like sweetness, but no, I guess, flavor to it. This one has sweetness and slightly a bit more flavor, but it's not light years ahead of everybody else, right? So if you were trying to grow for the arrows, you probably like, I would recommend this one, like some of the Indian strains. And again, these have very nice smelling blooms. They smell almost like some sort of jasmine, and it's pretty unique to this one. And all these varieties, they have pretty much light colored tannish brown seeds, except for the variety called Big Top. That variety called Big Top has pretty much black seeds. So I didn't have Big Top with me in terms of like the fruit, but here's how it looks like. Here's a seed packet of it. Very, very big, like top-like shape of it. And it's not as bumpy as the pearl. The pearl is a little bit more bumpy. This is more like flatter, kind of like some of the Chinese strains. And again, the seeds are pretty much black seeds like this. Very unusual, but also something to kind of note in terms of like me. I thought I got some bad seeds when I got these. Okay, so this is a review of the bittermelon I'm growing. Next year, I'm gonna probably grow out a few different new varieties too, just to test it out. You know, in the past, I haven't grown a lot of name varieties, so I'll be doing a lot more of that now. Okay, thank you guys all for tuning in.